Some people today make the argument, Jesus told us to go into the world and make disciples, not church members. It is true that Jesus commanded his followers to evangelize. In Matthew 28, verses 19 through 20, he said, "Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations." Christians should absolutely be concerned with reaching the lost. However, this argument overlooks an important truth. Jesus did not establish disconnected individuals. He established his church. In Matthew 6, verse 18, Jesus declared, "I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it." The church was not man's idea, it was Christ's idea. He promised to build it, and he remains its head today. Colossians 1:18 says, "He is also head of the body, the church." When people obey the gospel, God does not leave them isolated. Acts 2, verse 47 says that the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. Baptized believers were added by God to the church. Salvation and membership in Christ's body are inseparably connected. The word translated church is the Greek word ekklesia, meaning a gathering of citizens called out from their homes and into some public place or an assembly. Christians are called out of the world and called together. The very meaning of the church involves assembling. We cannot be assembling if we're never assembling. Fun fact, the word church appears 112 times in the New Testament. Must be important. This is why Hebrews 10 and verse 25 instructs us in saying, not forsaking our own assembling together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another. God expects his people to gather. The church is also described as the household of God and the church of the living God, the pillar and support of the truth. God's family is meant to function together, supporting and upholding his truth. Consider this question. How can Christians fully carry out the acts of worship if they never gather with the church? The New Testament describes Christians singing together. Ephesians 5:19 says, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Singing is something believers do together. The Lord's Supper was also observed together when disciples assembled. Acts 20 verse 7 says, on the first day of the week when we were gathered together to break bread. The communion meal was connected to the church gathering. Also, as Paul is instructing the church in Corinth on taking the Lord's Supper, he says, when you come together as a church, you can't take the Lord's Supper with the church members if you're not gathered together with them. Prayer, teaching, giving, encouragement, and fellowship, they're all strengthened when God's people come together as one body, and in some of these, impossible to do otherwise. Another question worth considering. Why are people often drawn to church during difficult times? When tragedy strikes, when a loved one dies, when sickness comes, or when life falls apart, people instinctively seek out the church. Why? Because deep down they recognize that God designed us to need spiritual support, encouragement, and fellowship. They understand the value of being surrounded by people who pray, care, and point them toward Christ. If the church is valuable in life's hardest moments, then it is valuable in every moment. Maybe you feel you don't have the time to go to church. I understand. I felt the same way. Earlier in my life, I was focused on my career, my hobbies, and I felt like Sunday was my day off. But I found that I made time for the things I wanted or needed to do. Golf, dinner out, meeting a friend for coffee. If you're like me, you spend a couple of hours a week and waiting in the car rider line at school. In all that, you can't set aside 1 hour a week to go to church. God asks us for so little compared to what he's prepared to bless us with. So don't be surprised if God's not filling your life if you're not willing to give him a little part of it. Attending church is not merely checking a box or fulfilling an obligation. It is participating in the body Jesus built, worshiping God as he intended, encouraging fellow believers, and growing spiritually alongside those who have been called out of the world and into his family. Jesus built the church. He is its head. God adds the saved to it. And Christians are commanded not to forsake assembling together. For these reasons, attending church is not optional for a faithful disciple. It is a part of God's design for his people.
We welcome you to join us at the Cortez Church of Christ, located in the beautiful historic fishing village of Cortez, Florida. Here you'll find a welcoming church that worships God according to sound biblical teaching. We meet on Sundays at 10 a.m. for Bible study, 11 a.m. for worship, and also for a midweek Bible study on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. We look forward to seeing you then.